at the Solomon R. Guggenheim Museum in New York City, we're looking at a painting by Vasily Kandinsky. This is Improvisation number 28, second version. It's interesting to start off by thinking about that title, because it's not the title of something that's being represented. It's the kind of notation that a composer uses.
But here we have improvisation, which is the name of a kind of musical composition. So the immediate question is, why is Kandinsky doing that?
Well, because he's composing here.
But he's clearly trying to associate painting with music, to suggest that, like music, painting can signify, it can mean things, it can take us places without representing anything concrete.
Actually, he would go further than that and say that you could hear color, that you could see music. This idea, which is called synesthesia, is something that Kandinsky was very interested in, the idea that there could be a kind of crossing of the senses.
So looking at this, he may have wanted us to actually hear something. And in fact, we know that Kandinsky was very influenced by Arnold Schoenberg, a turn-of-the-century composer, who was jettisoning the familiar Western harmonies to create a new kind of difficult atonal music for the beginning of the 20th century. And I see something atonal, I see something difficult here.
What would this painting sound like? For me, it would sound like a cacophony. It would sound like chaos. It would sound like a very dangerous but also brilliant moment.
We have brilliant color, a kind of hazy atmosphere through which that color pops. We have these black diagonal lines that crisscross with each other that almost feel like weapons moving through space.
And it's appropriate that the analogy that you're drawing is one of war. This is 1912. It's just 2 years before the First World War begins, and early 20th century Russian history is filled with political chaos.
We're clearly on the verge of abstraction, and in fact, when we first look at this painting, it looks entirely abstract. That is, we don't immediately recognize the things of the world. But this isn't what we would call a completely abstract painting.
Right, so one might not call this painting an abstract painting, but call it an abstracted painting.
So therefore, we should still be able to recognize some elements of the natural world.
Kandinsky was concerned that if we could recognize things too clearly, that our conscious minds would take over the interpretation and we would close off our emotional ability to respond to the pure color and form.
On the upper right, I seem to see a mountain with some buildings on it.
In the lower left, you have a great flood.
Just above that wave, cannon are being fired. The atmospheric effect almost reads like the smoke on a battlefield.
Down at the bottom, art historians sometimes recognize the manes and the arcs of the necks of horses.
Many artists at this time in the early 20th century had a sense that the artist could play an important role in the new civilization that was going to emerge in the 20th century.
So here we have a painting that is using color in a radically new way. This is color for its own sake, not to mimic, not to describe. We have line that is being used for its own sake, lines that are abstractly moving across the surface to create a sense of rhythm, to create a sense of staccato, musicality in this painting that is absolutely new.